I think it's fair to say that when it comes to the issue of Ward Churchill, that that Dan Caplis, Craig Silverman have done very extensive coverage, probably more extensive coverage than any other radio show host in America on this issue. I think we're also curious to know is how long has this been an issue with the show? I mean, when did it originate?
We first became aware of Ward Churchill and his controversial essay on January 28th, and then upon reading that, and critically, Grant, reading the portion at the end where he, in my view, advocates another terrorist attack on the United States, this time with chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons, that made both Craig and I want to learn more about this guy. I mean, anybody who'd advocate that kind of attack on the U.S. So we did the responsible thing, in our opinion. We went out and we researched him thoroughly. And in the course of that, we found these tapes, which he's never tried to hide. I mean, these tapes are marketed. We found the tapes, we listened to probably 40 or 50 hours of tape, and then we're just very troubled to find him on tape teaching young kids how to commit a terrorist attack on Wall Street or downtown Seattle. And that made us very, very concerned that we had somebody who was openly advocating and teaching the violent destruction of the United States of America as a university professor. And that was the key. So once we became aware of that information through our research, we felt duty-bound to make that public.
Now, I understand that. Have you done an interview with Ward Churchill by phone, in person on the show? Have you invited him to the show?
Oh, yes, repeatedly. In fact, we had the first radio interview of Ward Churchill on, I believe it may have been that Friday in late January. And then he promised to come back on our show the following Monday and then ducked us. And he ducked us, I think, because it became clear to him that we knew what we were talking about, that we were researched, and that he couldn't get away with his usual nonsense with us, that we had the facts. And so he ducked us, and he's ducked us since. So we've offered him a half an hour on air, uninterrupted, no commercials, for him to just talk if he'd like, as long as he'll answer questions for another half an hour. But he has no interest in answering tough questions.
Now, I understand you and Craig Silverman have also been to the CU Boulder campus too to address the issue with students who enjoyed your show from there. What was the response you got from that?
It was interesting. When we went up to do a show from there in late January, Ward Churchill had a group of his supporters there, and I really felt sorry for these kids because clearly they're buying into his violent, anti-American nonsense. And when we tried to talk to him on air, there was no depth. They would just chant his slogans, and then when we questioned them, they really couldn't back it up with any kind of intellectual argument or analysis, to the point where one of his followers just refused to leave the set and became belligerent, and it was really sad to see that. But it's naive to think that you can have a university professor traveling the country preaching violence against the U.S. and not have somebody believe it and act on it.
I think Ward Churchill's also said, at least at when he spoke at the Glenn Miller Ballroom in February 8th, that he would be willing to debate people on the issues. That at least what he said is that even people who he considered to have Nazi proclivities, and maybe that might involve also fall under certain talk show hosts, that he would be willing to respect their opinions and even debate them on issues. Has he been open to the request for a debate?
No, and Ward Churchill is incapable from everything I've seen, and at this point I've listened to, I think, all of the tape out there of him, which is a lot, and read probably 50, 100 different articles on him. He's incapable of an honest debate. He doesn't have the ability to engage in that, and as far as I can tell, never has. His standard MO is, once he's cornered, and it will happen with anybody who really knows the facts and can reason, he just starts to berate them, even if they're supporters. The way that, for example, on tape, he absolutely ridiculed in front of a large group a young person who wanted to commit violent acts, but not as violent as the Twin Towers. They wanted to commit sabotage acts, and he berated him, and then after humiliating him in front of the group, said, "How are you going to kill all those little Eichmanns you need to kill in the Twin Towers with your little sabotage acts?" So he's incapable of full, honest debate.
How has there been response from your callers when you do speak about the issues that are brought up from Ward Churchill? Are they generally positive in terms of what you're saying, generally negative? Do you have supporters? Are there supporters of Ward Churchill who call in? And how do they react?
Well, there are certainly supporters of Ward Churchill. First, you have that group who just want to kill Americans. I mean, they really, like Ward Churchill, enjoyed September 11. But then you have a broader group of good, reasonable people who just misunderstand the issue. They've never taken the time to really study it and learn what it's all about. And those people think it's a First Amendment issue. And unfortunately, they're just misinformed. They really don't understand the other evidence against Ward Churchill. So in terms of caller response, depends on the issue. But of those who are informed, it's almost unanimously, as it should be, opposed to Ward Churchill.
Do you think that as much coverage you've given to Ward Churchill, it seems to be a main focal point, just like much of the media has been accused of perhaps giving Ward Churchill, the man, lots of coverage more than the issues he brings up? Do you think that has been perhaps an oversight and not talking so much about the issues he raises, as he says?
No, in fact, we haven't talked enough about Ward Churchill, and the American media hasn't talked enough about Ward Churchill, because when you look at the evidence, in my opinion, look beyond the essay as well, Ward Churchill truly is, in my opinion, a domestic terrorist. I mean, you have somebody sitting here, we have him on tape, instructing young people how to carry out a terrorist attack on Wall Street or downtown Seattle, calling for the violent overthrow of the United States. He is a domestic terrorist. I'm not claiming he's actually personally committed terrorist acts, but can you imagine if we had, say, a Muslim religious leader out there instructing kids how to attack Wall Street, right down to what to wear, how to cut your hair, how to move so they don't see it coming? How do you think America would react to that? So I think we need more attention on the true facts surrounding Ward Churchill, because he's dangerous.
Last question, time permitting, is where do you see the CU investigation going, to speculate, and what do you see that will be brought up in the future with Ward Churchill? If he will keep his position, will he continue to be a political advocate, and how do you predict that all this will result in the months or years down the road from this?
Well, in my mind, the only question with the CU investigation is whether CU has the courage to do what it obviously must, because in terms of the facts, in my opinion, it's clear-cut at this point. He's committed the worst type of academic fraud repeatedly. Numerous examples of plagiarism, copyright violation, flat misrepresentation regarding historical facts, making up historical facts. So at this point, the university's course of action is clear. Imagine this. If they don't fire Ward Churchill, how could they ever again dismiss a student or faculty member who's guilty of plagiarism? So the only issue now is whether the institution has the courage to do what it must do.
Time permitting for this question, too. Do you believe Ward Churchill's claim that he's American Indian?
Oh, no, I don't believe that for a second. And the critical thing going forward is that I think the university, to be at all honest, and I love the university, is in a position where it must say to Ward Churchill that if you're allowed to stay, and first he shouldn't be because of the plagiarism and other fraud, if you're allowed to stay, you can no longer represent yourself to be an American Indian, because he can't provide any evidence of that. He may claim that family legend, whatever, fine, but right now it's clear from the genealogy that there's no evidence he's in fact an American Indian. So the university could not allow him to stay and claim that. So I think he will be put in that necessary limitation if he's allowed to stay. But I can't imagine at this point, from a standpoint of institutional integrity, that they could allow him to stay.
Is the invitation still open for him to come on your show?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, any day. But he won't, because again, in the end, Ward Churchill, first of all, is a coward. And that's unfortunate, but he is, and he's proven that time and time again. And he's great at going out there and telling you young kids to go out and kill and everything else, but then he won't step up and even put himself at risk by engaging in an honest dialogue. He truly is a coward. He doesn't have the facts to support his position. The facts expose him, and so he'll never, ever engage in an honest debate with us.
I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Dan Caplis. Are you good?